get to. Someone sent me a graphic novel script to look over last night. I actually read the whole thing last night, but I'm going to make a private video for him because people are not into the editing details. But this video applies to most First Comicsgate projects. And not as many people saw the last video with the dog and the artist, but they watched it a lot longer. And yes, I introduced the dog first because Doggo is better than some hippie artist. Write what you know, but leave your baggage behind. It's your story, but not exactly. This isn't a diary. It's written for a general audience, and you're trying to get someone to pay you for it. You don't want to make the mistake of being right-wing SJWs either. First, figure out the format of the story. Longer stories are only for experienced pros, no exception. Get all ideas of 100-plus page stories out of your minds if you're a virgin. Go for the magic 48 pages. If people love it, then on the next one, try 56 pages. You aren't as amazing as you think if you're a first-timer. The amount of work needed to edit and put together 48 pages is substantial. Writing, drawing, and editing 48 pages is not an easy task. 96 pages is more than twice as hard because the story has to be coherent for much longer. People have sent me scripts, and they've all been pretty good, from rank amateur to top-tier professional. Writing a longer story is something even the pros struggle to do well, and credit to Doug's Bigfoot Bill. That story surprised me. It was a kid's book, sort of, which kept an adult's interest, and it was a longer story with terrific art, and I am not a fan of that silly art style. But Doug can work magic in those filthy hands of his, but no homo. Think in terms of comic books. The 22-page structure, 48 pages, gives you a fast action adventure with a little romantic backstory. The next critical element is bias or axe grinding. Whatever your particular issue is, you have to keep in mind that you want to try to sell to the biggest audience as possible. The more you tailor story elements to be hyper-specific, the smaller your audience gets. Even if your audience is totally on board with your views, they want to be entertained, not lectured to. If you've ever seen Palestinian children's shows and cartoons, they used to be on YouTube. I don't know if they still have them there. They're really funny, but if you give the kids a choice, they'd probably pick Bugs Bunny instead of Jumping Jihad Rabbit. Even propaganda that you agree with gets old. So this guy sent me this 200-page script yesterday. I read it, and he said his friends and his family liked it, but of course you can't really believe them. But surprisingly, it was good. Not 200 pages good, but it could be edited down to a more manageable 48 or 56 pages. I know people think, oh, I've got a 200-page script and I know it's pretty good, so I'm almost done. Yes and no. It's great, but you only have just started. It has to go through the first round of editing. If the pros tell you that your first comic should be 48 pages, then follow that model. The second bit of editing is making sure you have likable characters doing cool stuff. If your story is basically a Lone Star Jawbreakers mix of a superhero team, then your first time, don't get too crazy. Use those books as a guide. The teams are likable. They care about each other. They aren't gay about it, but they are a team. It's natural that they mostly like each other. Don't try to make your team so hardcore that they are just emotionless robots. Even in Commando, the hero loved his daughter. And if you have a romantic backstory, and you should, it needs to be more than just a glance across the room. Describe in one scene how beautiful she is, or how they leap into each other's arms, or show it visually. You need to have more than an unspoken romance. Compare Mike's Lone Star, which is a sort of a cheesy Victorian-age romance mixed with a 1950s diner vibe. And I don't mean that as an insult. He does it very, very well. If you've ever seen Meet Joe Black, which I think came out about 25 years ago, with Brad Pitt and some hot chick from the 90s who was also in Mystery Men with Gina Garofalo and the guy who's in Zoolander. God, I'm horrible with movies. This chick kind of feels like she was... I wonder, I should ask him if she it just has that vibe from Meet Joe Black, like a chick in a coffee shop. Thin cheekbones, pencil skirt. I don't know why it reminds me of that. I forget her name. She was smoking hot. Of course, Mike is a happily married little hobbit. On the other hand, you've got a much more hit-it-and-quit-it romance in Jawbreakers from Zach, who has little Vietnamese children all over the world. Find a happy medium somewhere in between the two. They shouldn't be banging, but at least show them kissing each other. Now, the language. I know you're dealing with soldiers, or the equivalent, but you can probably minimize the swearing or use symbols to replace certain words, or just save it for when you absolutely need to make an impact. Then go through the story for stuff that sticks out as awkward. You're writing a comic book. You're not writing Moby Dick. If a few people tell you something is weird, then just cut it out and save it for the future. This is going to sound like an insult, but as a beginning, aim for high-level milquetoast. Cyberfrog Jawbreakers are dumb, simple stories done pretty well. There aren't any awkward scenes where you think the story is doing something weird. Cyberfrog had a few problem areas that stuck out. The artist went out of his way to hide the lead girl's titties, as if his small-titted wife and girlfriend were standing behind him with a rolling pin and a butt plug. I wonder if that's too far. Most of the time I can say what I want because the people I'm joking about aren't actually listening. But you never know. I'm sure his girlfriend has great tits. That probably was too far. Anyway, this story I read last night has some racial language. It wasn't horrible, but it was just out of place in a comic book. You don't want anything to do with race or religion that sticks out or rubs people the wrong way. And yes, I realize the irony. It's fine to have a story set in the Middle East, fighting the peaceful people, but we all know that religion in the Middle East is almost 100% of the splody types. You don't need to harp on it. If the guy is yelling Allah Akbar before he goes to pieces, we can make the connection. Okay, take a gander in focus of these two images. The face is done well, but what is this? What is this? Why? Who are you afraid of? The SJWs, you don't have to be afraid of the SJWs because you're not in that universe anymore. You're not selling to them. You don't have to worry about criticism from them. You don't have to worry about being canceled. You're completely, that's the point of Comicsgate, is that you've left the criticism of the SJWs behind. All right, admittedly, this is a little bit ridiculous. This is total 90s for cup overflow. And actually, if you look at Cyberfrog from 1993, it was more like this. And admittedly, that's too far. That's just nuts. I mean, that's like, I don't think that's even, I don't know. Anyway, you want to go for a happy medium. I mean, this is feels like I said, you got your girlfriend and your wife are both looking over your shoulders and saying, don't make them bigger than RB cups or whatever. But you're not, I mean, who's your audience? Is people who are already kind of on your side. They want to see, your audience is more into this and less into that. So that's just, that's just what I'm saying. And when you've got a superhero team up type of story, like the script the guys sent me, you got to have stuff like this where it shows that they like each other. There's camaraderie. They're getting along. They're all super hardcore badass, but they're not, you don't want to make them like they're so aloof. The one thing he sent me this story was the characters were kind of fighting a little bit too much, and it felt like there's a good fighting and bad fighting, and bad fighting is when you get the feeling that the characters don't trust each other. Anyway, so this is a much shorter comic book. I don't know how long it is, probably 48 pages. The comic book the guy sent me is 200 pages, and for example, this short comic book has got a lot of romance in it. Too much? Maybe too much? I don't know. It works because it has that Meet Joe Black feel to it. And plus, because the art is real good. He draws women really, really well. But in this guy's 200-page story, it was I think he was trying to imply a romance with a couple of glances exchanged across a room, or the guy got mad when someone was critical of the girl, something like that. It's this is a 200-page script. You can have a little bit more stuff like this. In this one short book, he managed to include camaraderie, teamwork, the team caring about each other. The people, it humanizes the characters, even though they're superheroes. And this guy's, he's trying to get laid. He's trying to start a family and get married and have kids, all this kind of stuff. But, when it comes down to it, he wants to, He wants to do the fun stuff before he gets married and has kids. But it's like basic human drives, basic human emotions is what I'm saying. And so, sex sells. You want to, like, get a little... You got an artist who can draw, so you might as well make use of those talents. That's kind of awkward phrasing. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, guys. I'll see you all next episode.